I'm Algenon Cash, and you're locked in. As you know, I always try to stay ahead of all the emerging trends and everything happening within the macro and micro world. There's so much happening in our world right now. But one of the big announcements, we obviously have a new president that just got sworn in, and he's already made some significant announcements about what his plans are in terms of the economy and job creation and technology. We also know that our 47th president is surrounded by people from the tech world. And so one of the announcements that we heard this week was the $500 billion investment from Oracle and SoftBank and ChatGPT in data centers around the country. So they're going to be building $500 billion in data centers. For some of you all that maybe don't stay up to date on some of this information, or you don't watch the news as closely as I do, you may be wondering, why do we need all these large data centers here in the country? Well, that's because artificial intelligence is growing by leaps and bounds. And this technology, is smart and innovative as it is, it does require a tremendous amount of data. So we're starting to make those investments now as we move further and deeper into the AI connected world. So I had to look around and say, okay, who's a friend of mine that I can invite onto the show and we can have a conversation and help my audience to get educated about artificial intelligence, all the emerging trends, where are we heading, and how fast are we going to get there? Because I know from talking to some of you all, you are deathly afraid of artificial intelligence. I know some of you are refusing to use it. You won't use Chat GPT. You don't want it on your phone. And I think it's because you have a lot of limiting beliefs and maybe even some misexpectations about what is occurring with artificial intelligence. And so my good friend, Mario, I haven't seen you in a long time. Mario, out. I practiced this, Mario, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Mario, introduce yourself. Tell the folks who you're with.
Yeah, so mine, thanks, Algenon. It has been quite a while, probably like a decade or more. So my name is Mario Aldayuz. I am with HL Pro Tools, and I run a consulting company for AI called Alibot.
Thank you, Mario. I appreciate that. And my audience, I'm not exaggerating here. You know how transparent and open I am. I literally practiced how to say Mario's name right before we came on, and of course my brain just failed on me. So Mario, thank you. Certainly, my inability to pronounce your last name is not a reflection of how much I value your expertise and intelligence. I had a chance to meet you back when you were living in Greensboro and doing some work over at the Forge. And so you've always been someone that works with his hands and innovative and creative. And now it sounds like you're doing that with artificial intelligence. So, my audience, we want to approach this with a deep level of curiosity, Mario. We really want to get inside your mind and understand what's going
Sure.
on. So to start with, let's not assume everybody knows what you do over at HL Pro Tools or at Olibot. Just give us a good rundown of what does day to day look like for Mario and the kind of technology that you're working on.
Sure. So at HL Pro Tools, I am the head of partnerships. My responsibility is to cultivate strategic partnerships with people in the software and tech industry, specifically that work with an AI-powered platform called High Level, which is a customer relationship management and strategic marketing platform. That means that I partner with people in the AI space, so everything from voice and conversation to operational automations, things like that. And then with Alibot, I do that at a much more granular level, helping businesses to implement AI in ways that make sense, and at a much deeper level than just what you would typically access with, like, say, ChatGPT or Claude.
That's very good. That's a good rundown. And we're going to come back to some of these different types of AI platforms because obviously ChatGPT is the one that most all of us know. That's the one we hear about the most in the media and so forth. But there's others that have been created that are out there that I want to also come back and educate my audience about. Let's start with some history on this. Now, the company that developed ChatGPT, it's not called ChatGPT. What's the company that actually created the technology?
So it's called OpenAI.
OpenAI. So for some of us, me included, it appears or it feels like all this stuff just came out of nowhere, like in the last year or two. That's what it feels like, I guess, because it's gotten mainstream. I've been around business long enough, Mario, to know that sometimes when it feels like something came out of nowhere, it's being planned and worked on and created over a longer period of time. Give us a little history. How did we get here? Because I know it couldn't have. All this OpenAI didn't do all this in the last 2 years.
Yeah, so what's crazy is that AI realistically has been around since roughly 1956.
Wow.
Um, it's been around for a lot longer than, people have it more than it's been publicized. And I think, it's like any technology, facets of the internet were around long before components of the internet were around long before it was widely utilized by the mainstream.
Hmm.
And I think what's happened recently is it's gone from being something that was very sci-fi, very like you had to be very nerdy, very techy. It wasn't really available to the general public in a digestible manner. And that's where like I would give OpenAI credit for being the first people to market to bring an interface that the average Joe could use. So they put it on, basically all they did was they took all this crazy code and these theories and what was already built and put it on a website. And that was like the beginning, just like, social media was around long before Facebook was.
Yep.
And then Facebook came in and they targeted a very specific niche and grew like wildfire. OpenAI did the exact same thing.
That's a great analogy, and thank you for breaking it down as if I'm a fifth grader, because that's what I feel like, Mario, when you and I talk. Mario and I recently had a phone call because I'm toying with in my mind about developing some artificial intelligence to assist with what we do with our real estate fund and some of our real estate education classes. And I tell you, when I talk to Mario, I just I'm fascinated, but I get lost also at the same time because things are changing and evolving so quickly. So, what was the motivation, Mario? I mean, the folks behind OpenAI, I understand now how they went about doing it and making it more simple so all of us could have access to it. But what motivated them? Is it because they want to take over the world like a lot of people seem to believe, or was there some other motivation that many of us might be missing?
So I think a lot of it has to do with a misconception about AI taking over the world and being some scary thing. OpenAI wanted to bring what was historically like the Colossus computer, right? You think about that computer is dumber than a fraction of my smartphone and it was very unapproachable. It required a lot of configuration, a whole team to manage it. A literal bug would go into the gears and all of a sudden stop the computer, right? And
Hmm.
so it was an unapproachable technology. And OpenAI's motivation behind it was to bring a tool to the general public and the value of what AI can do. That, in and of itself was a huge benefit. And they released it at first for free, and it's still technically free to use. And it was to bring this amazing opportunity, because that's what it is, an amazing opportunity. It's a tool to everybody to be able to use to help you to grow faster, to solve problems, to do research. I mean, there's so many different pieces of value associated with AI.
I like the way you use the word tool, because I often talk. I went to school. You wouldn't know this because it's been so long, but I went to school for computer science, and Mario, you'll chuckle at this, but when I was in school, they were teaching us Visual Basic and how to program AS400s and things like that. So I know my audience are like, what in the world are these guys talking about? But just so my audience knows, that's just some old technology in this world. But that was 20 something years ago. So I'm someone that approaches technology with a certain openness because I do believe they're just tools. When we created the hammer, that was new technology, at
Right.
that time, right? And like anything else, you can take a hammer and you can build a house, or you can take a hammer and you can kill someone. I don't think it's as much about the tool or the technology. It's how people decide to start using it is really what opens up the Pandora's box. So with that said, we know that there's a lot of fear out there. What would you tell someone if one of my audience members were here with us on the stream? What would be your advice to them in terms of, managing some of the fear they have around the changes that are happening?
So there's a lot of safeguards in place. There's actually an entire alliance of very intelligent individuals and thought leaders in a variety of disciplines that have established clear-cut guidelines for what AI should and shouldn't have access to, what it should and shouldn't be able to do. And it's an ethical responsibility that these organizations are bound to. And legislators now are actually starting to release AI specific legislation to help guide people, specifically the companies that are developing these technologies, to avoid any of these Terminator-esque situations. Everyone thinks AI is so scary because they've seen the Terminator. They think that we're going to release a sentient
Or the
intelligence
Matrix?
or the Matrix,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
A sentient intelligence that is going to take over the world. And at this point, that would be like releasing an infant, like quite literally like 1 month old infant to take over the world. The baby's gonna do a lot of cooing and cawing and like maybe puke on you, but it's not going to exactly do much taking over the world. We're not anywhere remotely close to that level yet.
Well, I want to. I want to zero in on the word yet, Mario. I like anything else. I think things evolve, over time. I mean, we have evolved over time. Technology has evolved over time. Some of the things that I do with the internet today, I could not have fathomed in the 90s unless I
Sure.
watched an episode of the Jetsons or something. So, let's zero in on the word yet. Is it possible that AI continues to evolve and almost becomes a self-existing entity?
Anything's possible. I mean, when you think, back even when I was a child and smartphones were really, or phones in general, you had your briefcase that you had to carry around, and the idea that you would be able to get directions from your briefcase was just unfathomable, right? And now we're in a day and age where this technology has evolved, but it's not killing people. And I think that AI has the potential to evolve to be smarter, more efficient, a better tool, better educated, all of these things. But true, like what would be scary is self-awareness, where
Mm.
the AI can make its own thoughts and it has its own identity in that it's able to come up with random random thoughts.
Like inspiration.
Right. And it's just that for me, what I believe is that is so far out in the future, even the remote possibility that all of us will be long gone before, that's even remotely possible. What would be more likely is a technology where they can take the human consciousness and replicate it or download it into a better technology vessel.
Hmm.
But even that, super far out, super still sci-fi. AI is relatively dumb in that you have to give it the appropriate inputs in order to achieve the desired outputs, garbage in, garbage out, right? So I can ask AI a simple question like, how do I build this software program? And its response is going to theoretically be like accurate, but it's going to miss a ton of steps because I wasn't clear in my desires and the things I want to get out of it in the long run. What AI is good for is solving everyday quality of life problems. So it's good for learning, which even then it hallucinates. It's not always perfectly accurate. Um, it's good for solving problems and coming up with potential solutions, but it always requires a human to have the general uh logic check of what the AI is saying. Because if you tell me that the sky is purple and I don't stop and think for a second and say, you know what, maybe I should go outside and check if the sky is purple, I might believe you,
Yeah.
right? But as a human, I'm like, you know, that doesn't sound like it's perfect. Let me go check if it's purple first. And that's kind of how we have to treat AI.
Do you see, and you sort of alluded to this in your comments just a moment ago, do you see a blending between the human race and AI at some point? I know that Elon Musk is flirting with the idea of a Neuralink, where you literally have some type of AI technology embedded in your brain. There are other companies that are looking at all other types of other solutions that might utilize AI. I know Larry Ellison at the big announcement with President Trump the other day talked about ways to use AI with cancer patients and that kind of thing. Could we be evolving into a world where humans and artificial intelligence sort of blend together?
I believe so. I think that that is a goal and a possible future. But again, it's still nothing different than a smartphone in terms of tool utilization capabilities. It's just a really smart smartphone. So you still have to have inputs to get your desired outputs. So even if they do develop a neural link where our brains are hardwired into an AI interface, that doesn't mean that the AI is going to randomly decide to take over our brains like in Spider-Man with, Dr. Octopus, right? Because the AI lacks the inspiration and self-awareness to be able to do so. And that's where it would become scary. That's where I would personally say I'm afraid of this technology. Until then, it's amazing. And I think that, people are scared of it because they have that misconception that it is to that level or it potentially could get there in the nearest future. But what it can do right now is it can solve differential equations faster, meaning that our science and technology is going to catapult forward at a much faster rate, which means that cures for things like cancer and cures for things like Alzheimer's and stuff like that are much closer on the table
Hmm.
than they were pre-AI. Because imagine if, the problem with Alzheimer's is a degradation of memory and your brain essentially is just not cooperating with what needs to be happening. Imagine if you could simply install a small memory module that was AI powered in an Alzheimer's patient, and magically they would have all of their life to live until they die a natural death.
Hmm.
That's where AI is truly going to shine. But we're still, again, years away from something like that happening.
No, I think not to get spiritual on my audience, but I often hear people say God doesn't work miracles any longer. Well, I would beg to differ. I think we're living in some miraculous times right now, to
Agreed.
be able to do the kind of things that we're able to do with these phones and artificial technology and or artificial intelligence and just all the innovation that we see happening around the world. It feels pretty miraculous to me. And, the possibility of being able to help terminally ill patients to finally have some relief from their suffering should be something that gets all of us pretty excited for sure. Do shifting focus a little bit? I mean, when you think about, I've heard from a political perspective that we are entering the next arms race, right? So we went through the nuclear arms race, and every country wanted to stockpile their nuclear weapons so that they could deter other countries from attacking. Could we be going through a new arms race that is AI centric?
Sometimes I think yes, and oftentimes I think no. And the reason I say that is because there's a difference between a nuclear reactor and a nuclear bomb. One is a incredibly valuable tool if used properly. The other one is an incredibly destructive weapon. The same could be said for the wheel, right? Versus a traditional horse or the development of the automobile or something like that, right? There's always an opportunity to weaponize things if the wrong people have the wrong motivations and leverage a tool improperly. Do I think that we're entering a race of who can build the biggest and baddest and smartest AI? 100%. But that's also why there are a substantial amount of thought leaders in the world who have made their intentions very clear to subvert those efforts and put safeguards in place. Like you can't have an AI do create malicious code, right? Now you can do things like jailbreak an AI, but it doesn't have the scale or horsepower that like OpenAI does, for example. So it can't really do very much. So I think that yes, there will be some back and forth trading of potentially, nefarious things. But by and large, what AI is doing right now is it's unifying the world. And I'll give you a perfect example. So previously we used Google Translate, right, which was not AI powered initially. It was very bad, for lack of better words. You'd ask it, tell me where the bathroom is, and it would say your mother's ugly,
Hmm.
right? It didn't understand linguistics and context and situations and things like that. AI can understand those things. So using AI powered translators, I am able to communicate with people in Pakistan. So I work with people all over the world, and I'm able to communicate with those people in real time in their native language without sacrificing any detail or nuance associated with that conversation.
Wow.
And that in and of itself connects people together. I'm able to do research in all different disciplines without having to search thousands of textbooks. I have it at my fingertips. I can write 10,000 lines of code in 3 hours versus 6 months. And so it's what it's doing is it's giving us tools that are going to bring us together, in my opinion.
I love your optimism, and I would agree. I was sharing. I taught a real estate class today, and I was sharing with my students that I utilize AI. I use it for a lot of research to
Mhm.
figure out what's going on with the market or what's going on with real estate, or just to generate ideas about how to
Mhm.
approach a deal. I do a lot of people read my op-eds in the Carolina Journal. I utilize AI for the research of those. I don't let AI write the article, but I certainly utilize it to make sure I've got the facts and the numbers and some of the historical context that I like to bring in when I'm writing. And I will tell you, I can write an article, 10 times faster than I used to be able to. I can put an investment plan together much faster than I used to be able to. I can even put together pro formas, much,
Mhm.
much faster than I used to be. So I know that there are really a lot of great efficiencies built into it. And I encourage people to focus on some of that. I do get a little concerned that there's some small country out there that nobody's thinking about that all of a sudden gets artificial intelligence and they're able to build a nuclear bomb or they're able to build some weapon and obviously let that off somewhere. So I mean there are those concerns and worries that are out there. But, I always like to remind people you don't have control over every single thing, so you got to look at where you have control, look at where you have influence, and certainly don't be scared and run from the technology. If there's any business owners that are listening to Mario, especially for those business owners that are new to this subject and still, don't quite understand what's happening with artificial intelligence, give them a business owner some ideas on how they could start leveraging AI. And when I preface that, Mario, like I know the large companies out in the world have already integrated this into their companies. And that's some of the great work that you're doing right now. And I've got some other friends of mine that do that kind of work. I'm thinking about small businesses that typically are very slow to evolve, very slow to embrace technology, but quite frankly, Mario probably needs something like AI more than Coca-Cola does.
Absolutely. And so here's a really good example of how, as a small business owner, AI, and I'll give a couple of short ones, but the biggest impact that AI makes is in where each person finds its own unique value, right? It's not something that deploying AI, because there's so many pieces to AI, is magically a solution. Like, it's not going to cure your profitability problems. It's not going to magically cure your staffing problems. But what it will do is specifically solve the issues that you focus on addressing. So I met a gentleman who worked as a contractor for a construction company. He was a bartender, and we were having a chat, and he was asking what I was doing, and I explained to him that I was using AI to write code. And he was like, "Oh man, that sounds so cool." And we got into a conversation, and he was like, "AI just seems so unapproachable." He was like, "But I really wish that it could help me write emails." And my ears immediately perked up. And I was like, "Tell me why." And he said, "Well, I can't get promoted right now because my boss reads my emails that I'm going to send to customers, and they're so poorly worded and they're so incorrect grammatically, and letters are mixed up." And I was like, "Why?" And he said, "Because I'm horribly dyslexic and I have a learning
Hmm.
disability."
Wow.
And so I said, "Well, what if I told you that in the next 5 minutes, I'll download an app on your phone, and every email that you send out moving forward will be 100% perfect, and all you have to do is talk to your phone?" And he started crying.
Wow.
And that is a specific solution for businesses where they need to be more professional, something like that. But then you get into things like conversation AI or voice AI, where it actually picks up the phone for you. So I'm a plumber. I'm not. I don't do any plumbing. I'm terrible at it. But if I were a plumber and I were under a sink or replacing a toilet or under someone's house, and someone calls me or texts me, speed to lead in marketing is a huge term, meaning that the customer is going to try and reach out to you via text. They'll try and reach out to you via phone. And if you don't answer within a reasonable time frame, they move to the next vendor,
Yep.
right? Is that accurate?
Very.
So AI can empower those business owners by answering the text message if pre-programmed with information. And literally all they have to do is talk into their phone to program it. They just detail out what their business does, what their hours of availability are, things like that. And the AI can respond to those customers on their behalf, engage with those customers, and even go so far as booking appointments and taking payments. So you're talking about being able to focus on what you're good at and letting AI handle the things that are falling off the bus. Those are some practical business examples.
Thank you for sharing that because I've got several small business owners that are part of my audience and small business owners that listen to WTOB. And I really want people to embrace this technology. It certainly could make your business run more efficiently, certainly free you up to, small businesses typically don't have a lot of employees. The owners are wearing a lot of different types of hats. And so AI, artificial intelligence can free you up so that you can
Hmm.
focus more on your customers, more on your product, more on your people instead of all the distractions that oftentimes comes into the business. So Mario, I appreciate you sharing that. Now, I'm running out of time, but I do want to work in two more questions. And one, Chat GPT is the AI that we hear about all the time. I mean, you
Absolutely.
almost can't turn on the news or the television without hearing something related to Chat GPT. But there are other types of AI that's been created that also does different types of things. Give us a quick rundown on some of the other options that are out there.
Yeah, so I mean, OpenAI and ChatGPT are absolutely on the forefront from a marketing standpoint. They do a really good job with their branding. They do a very good job with, being the perceived thought leader. But I've actually stopped using OpenAI nearly as much and migrated to a newer, more boutique platform called Anthropic that built the Claude models. And I found that it's much better at writing. It's not as good at research or scientific operations, but it does much better in, like, let's say that you want creative ideas or you need help writing an email. It's much closer to sounding genuine and authentic than OpenAI does. OpenAI sounds a lot like a robot when you write stuff, right? There are platforms like there's one, and this is kind of a unified platform. It's not just an AI platform, but it's called Go High Level. And you talked about business owners, and you have a lot in your community. And Go High Level, which is really just called High Level, but it's gohighlevel.com, is an AI powered business operations system that uses multiple AIs and packages them together. So you never actually see which specific model you're using, but each feature in the software is AI powered and designed to help business owners scale their business at a very low cost, right? And be more efficient. There's also platforms like Bolt, B-O-L-T, that just came out in the last like 6 months. And that's a software development platform. So I do a lot of coding, a lot of software development. Writing code by hand takes forever, and it's not very accurate a lot of times. Even good software developers will forget a comma, and then you have to spend hours bug hunting to find the comma, right? That you're missing. Bolt can write thousands of lines of code an hour by simply giving it the architectural guidelines for what you want to construct. So those are some different examples of platform, but for everyday users, OpenAI and Anthropic are like the leading contenders.
Well, I am certainly I was taking notes, Mario. I don't know if my audience was, but I'm going to go check out a lot of the suggestions that you just made. I've heard about Claude before. I think I heard that they were talking about it one day on Bloomberg, and
Hmm.
I think they were talking about how Claude is able to do presentations and PowerPoints and different things like
Hmm.
that. Am I correct on some of that, or?
Absolutely. And so one of the things, and I'll just kind of tie in a couple of your different points very quickly. You mentioned the nuclear bomb and weapons development, all those things. And then you mentioned building presentations, writing books. We talked about helping people with learning disabilities and curing cancer and all of those things. OpenAI and Claude, being the two leading contenders in AI technology, are not off building destructive devices with artificial intelligence. They're trying to figure out who can make the best diagram and the most accurate picture and the fastest videos and the most like useful creative things that are the next evolution in creativity. That's what they're competing on.
No, I appreciate you adding that at the end. I guess my final question, I mean, there may be someone out there, especially if they're a young person, and I fundamentally believe that artificial intelligence is the future. And I
Hmm.
know that some people are fearful of the disruption that it might cause, certainly, depending on, what type of industry you work in and maybe even what your function is in the industry. It could go away as AI continues to evolve and expand. So, what's your advice to that young person that's getting ready to graduate high school, thinking about what they want to do for the rest of their lives? Um, what could they be thinking about or considering as it relates to artificial intelligence?
Ask ChatGPT. That's literally the biggest piece of advice that I have for anyone who has not touched AI or wants to stay relevant with the technology. It's start incorporating it into your daily routine. Like I use it for meal planning, I use it for workout routines, all kinds of different things. If you want to stay and keep up with the technology, you have to first learn how to use what's available and then just keep asking it questions and it will start doing more, doing better. You'll start learning more. And it's kind of like a self power generating engine.
Mario Aldayuz. Did I get it right?
You did. And I saw you
Awesome.
practicing it in your head.
Yeah, it took me 30 minutes. Took me 30 minutes. Man, I'm so grateful to have you as a friend. I am thankful that you made time to come have this conversation with me today. I know for a fact my audience that's listening certainly was able to learn something. This was a very powerful conversation, and I'm excited, man. I look forward to working with you and your team in 2025 to accomplish some of the goals that I have to leverage artificial intelligence within our real estate practice. And then to my audience, I always appreciate you. I appreciate you locking in with me. I appreciate you staying tuned to WTOB. Make sure you know every Sunday morning, that is where the Locked In Show broadcasts. But if you happen to miss it there, of course, you can find me on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Spotify, Pandora, wherever you like to get your podcasts, you can lock in there. And until next time, as always, y'all stay locked in.